you've said to me that you believe you know this conversation between Balaji and Tim Ferriss, which for those of you who are uninitiated is probably the greatest podcast I've listened to in the past year, and just an incredible conversation that I highly recommend. And you summarize this conversation, this 3.5 hour long conversation. How long did that summarization take?
I hate to admit how long it takes me to do these things. Why? Is forever.
Why does that's amazing that it takes a long time. Yeah, I think you should be proud of that.
Should lean into it. Yeah. I will answer your question is probably 15 or 20 hours, something like that, which is just nuts because it's free. And it's like, I don't get anything out of it other than education. And, some people respond to it or something like that, maybe audience building. But whenever I decide to, by the way, these are also emotional investments. And I actually don't know if they're going to pan out. Every single one that I do that is somewhat valuable, there is a moment where I don't believe it's possible to summarize it well. And I will shut my computer and I'll walk over and talk to my wife and I'll be like, this one's not going to work. Is she at this point it's become a matter of comedy in our house. And no, but it's true. And so first of all, that was a 3 hour and 45 minute conversation. You have to listen to it multiple times just to get into the flow of what they're trying to say. And I want to tell you so much about this process. First of all, the medium of podcasting is so valuable, but it also is massively a transmission loss between the podcast itself and the listener. I would challenge anyone right now who has listened to the Balaji Tim Ferriss conversation, write down on a piece of paper 5 specific things that Balaji said. And this is, mind you, one of the most heralded podcast tapings and episodes of the past year, I would say. Yes, for sure. And I decided to distill it without even listening, before I listened to it for the first time, just because I knew I've listened to a lot of Ferriss conversations and I've read a lot of Balaji stuff. And I'm like, the combination of those two things is going to be magic. So I'm like, this must be done. But it is so difficult to retain with a high fidelity the level of exchange that two human beings can the number of thoughts two human beings can exchange in that period of time. It's a lot of thoughts. And so I downloaded the episode, I copied the transcript rather, and then pasted it into Word and just got to work. And it's 40,000 words. So that's 54 pages, Arial, single space, 10 point. It's a massive document. Some of these things, like the big idea summaries that I do on Twitter, are David Perell's was 200 pages of text that you want to, and that's I don't know what it was. Let's call it on the order of 80 to 100,000 words.
It's a full book.
Tweets. It's a full book. And you're taking it down a Twitter thread. The typical big idea summary is something like 25 tweets, which is something like 1,500 words. Anyway, all of that, my most recent ones have I've ignored the Twitter thread limit, and just now the Balaji one was 200 tweets. So I only got it down from 40,000 words to 7,500 words. But that is 12 to 15% of the conversation. So here's what I want you to do. Try to, not you, but anyone listening, from memory, write down what Balaji told Tim. Very difficult to do. Then read my tweet storm, which is only 12% of the conversation, and just be amazed by how much substance was in that conversation. And that's why I say it's a lossy medium. There is value to trying to distill and summarize these things and save them and return to them as a distilled artifact, because there is a lot of lessons that you can carry forward longitudinally through time.
Yeah. And I said to you, when I was on the phone with you, I said, I told a bunch of people that they should listen to this podcast, and they were like, why should I listen to it? And I was at a loss for what to tell them, because there's so much there, and I couldn't actually formulate why they should pay attention. And even after reading your summary of it, I was like, I learned so much from your summary, and I still would be like hard pressed to explain to someone why they should pay attention, which just goes to show either I'm having trouble comprehending and explaining, or it's just a very difficult thing to do. How would you try to convince someone to listen to that episode specifically?
Yeah, I did. I believe I know that episode like better than anyone else in the world at this point, having lived with it for so long. Um, he covers a breadth and depth of topics ranging from how India is going to win in the new post-war, he calls it like Cold War II or after Cold War II. The future of education. He believes that there is a new approach via paying people in Bitcoin for tasks, and you can incentivize the 400 million people in India alone who just came online with 4G and 5G, and you can create through a company that he started, an initiative that he started, 1729.com, is very interesting concept. He talks about things ranging from like the future of war, like at the end, I say Tim started the conversation with that, but I ended the summary with that because I just felt like the summary needed to start with something different. But like, how in a drone on drone environment, will there even be an incentive for nation states to put forward human beings when you have computers making the decisions and so forth? And this is a topic that many people have opined on. Gosh, there's just such an array that he covered. Bitcoin and crypto were, I think, the meat and potatoes of the podcast, and where crypto is going with this, like he calls it, nation states and neutral protocols. So when you have like there will be a system when China and the US are duking it out. There will be a third option that that you can offer the world of these crypto networks that are completely decentralized. And how does that change human behavior and like cooperation across borders, things like that. And he's just so deeply thoughtful on these issues, and there's so many details to share.
One of the things that stuck out to me was the declining America aspect of it. And this is from your summary. You said you're quoting him or summarizing him, but the internet is to the USA what the Americas were to the UK. It's a new world that it will eventually give birth to a successor. And then also in a serious non-nuclear conflict between the US and China would probably win. What it made me curious about, though, was from your perspective as someone who spent time in the military, how did learning about this or summarizing it make you feel?
I believe there is a lot of truth in what he is saying. You cannot objectively look at the performance of some government institutions and organizations on the federal, state, and local levels and think that there's anything but a lot of improvement to have. And state capacity, in some ways, has declined in the most recent generation in a way that is inescapable. You must admit that it is the case. I personally believe that I'll give you an example. Like, I traveled abroad in the early 2000s and late 1990s. And when I was at the academy and traveled to foreign countries, I lived in Spain, lived in Belgium, and so forth and so on. People looked at you in awe that you were from the United States of America. I mean, it was palpable how people respected our country. And this doesn't get into the politics of like make America great again or anything like that. It's not the point I'm trying to make. What I'm trying to make is America was the preeminent superpower in the world that was like massive, like you could not argue against that. And the reason was a lot of our institutions were respected, not only on the government side and on the capitalist side, like sort of the commercial side. Both of those things were like acting in harmony, and we could get big things done. And a lot of what people say is like, the Pentagon was built in 16 months. How is that possible that happened in the 1940s? If you tried to build the Pentagon today, it would take you 25 years. It would not be possible. And the point Balaji is making is just look at how like India and China responded in certain ways to the pandemic. You could like, China had telemedicine, they had drones delivering supplies. Like within weeks, they built a hospital in like 10 days. And so it's a failure of both imagination and execution in the United States these days. And in fact, while I served in the front office of the Secretary of Defense, and I served in the military for 11 years and like sort of seen the senior levels of government, one of the things that conspiracy theorists don't get is like there is no person behind the curtain. The government is incompetent in many ways. It's effective in some other ways. Like designing a submarine that actually works is an incredible engineering feat, with a nuclear reactor that goes X number of feet underwater, portable and pressurized and all of this stuff. That is an amazing feat. But I just feel like these days, there is an unbelievable waste of resources and failure of imagination and execution on the government side. So it made me feel not good, to answer your question, but I didn't reject it out of hand. And you can take this point too far. I don't think America is a completely dysfunctional state. But yeah, so that's my response.